Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. You know, when you're younger, you do some stupid things. If I could go back in time and erase that stupid thing, that's exactly what I would do. It was around the year 2001. A few months prior, I had lost my job as a web designer, which wasn't a problem because I wanted to get into marketing. And so I joined a local chapter of the international group BNI, which is Business Networking International. And every Friday we'd meet at this amazing restaurant which overlooked Auckland Harbour. But I was too edgy to worry about the scenery, because right there in the room was my competition. When I joined BNI, I was made to understand that only one person from one profession was allowed to join a single group, which meant if there was already a real estate agent in that group, well, the second person couldn't join. And I was already in marketing. I was a marketing consultant. And there was this other guy who was also a marketing consultant. And since I had joined the group first, it was my crusade to get rid of him, to make sure that I was the only one in the group, that I cornered all of the referrals from the group. That was my goal, to get rid of the competition. I know now that it was a silly thing to do. I know that it makes no difference. But does it not make a difference? It does make a difference. In fact, it works to your benefit to have competition in the room or in your space or in your city or in your town. Competition, the one thing that we're all trying to get rid of, is actually good for us. And this is what this podcast is about. We're going to cover 3 topics about competition. The first being that it is proof of a healthy environment. If you don't have competition, you're likely to be in trouble very quickly. The second thing is that it's about proof of profit. When you start up in a business, how do you know it's going to be profitable? Competition shows you how. And finally, competition saves you a lot of energy. It saves you from having to deal with that headwind that's always blowing in your face, cold and consistent and never-ending. So let's find out how competition is good for us and why we need to have more of it. Well, if not more, at least not to get frustrated at the competition that seems to be growing around us all the time. Every now and then a client will come up to me and say, I have an idea. Nobody's ever done this before. It's unique. And at that point in time, I feel a sense of despair. How am I supposed to tell this person that it's a problem? It's a problem to have an idea that no one has ever done before. And you say, wait, that doesn't make sense. When you have something that's absolutely unique, it should be better because people have not seen it before, they have not experienced it before, and they're more likely to buy into something like that. Maybe it's an idea, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service, but people are more likely to buy into something that is absolutely unique. So think about sushi. When we go into the history of sushi, we find that it goes all the way back to Japan and the 8th century. But it's a meal that's still largely centralized in Asia. But it's only around the 1960s that it starts to get some traction in the US. In Little Tokyo in Los Angeles, there is this restaurant called Kawafuku. And it stays there. It stays in Little Tokyo. And slowly it starts moving out. It slowly makes its way into New York, into Chicago. But it's only in the 1980s that it starts to become a full-on craze. question to ask at this point in time is, would you be better off starting up a sushi restaurant today when there are thousands of sushi restaurants? Or would it be better back in 1960 where there was just one or two or 10 or 20? And you don't have to dig into statistics to find out that answer. If you look around you, you'll find that cafes open where other cafes exist. Car dealers seem to bunch together. But even when we go back in time, and if we were to go back into older cultures, we find that all the goldsmiths, they're all in one area. All the dry fruit vendors are in one area. All the vegetable stalls are in one area. All the meat and fish, they're all competition, all side by side. It's always been like that. And even today, if you look at books, cookbooks for instance, you'll find that there was a cookbook last week and the week before that and the week before that. And you go back all the way 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, it's the same thing. Nobody should be buying cookbooks anymore. We've got enough cookbooks in the library. We've got enough recipes online. We've got enough videos on YouTube. Nobody should be buying cookbooks at this stage. Someone should have invented something different, something new. But often new is not profitable. You enter a space where competition already exists. When Uber entered the market, it's not like taxis didn't exist. The competition already existed. There is no such thing as a saturated market, because what you're doing is you're entering a place where competition exists, and it shows you that it's already thriving. This is how it works in commerce, it works in nature, it works everywhere. Plants grow where other plants already exist. Yes, it's competition, but it shows you that the environment is stable. It shows you that it's possible to sustain and grow from that point on. And so when you look at competition, it's very easy to think of them as adversaries, as someone that's going to get in your way. But in reality, competition shows you that there is stability there and there is possibility for growth. Which is why when we enter any kind of business, or if we're looking to create a new project, we have to ask ourselves, does the competition exist? We have to go out and look for competition. And if it doesn't exist, then we don't have a bit of a problem, we have a big problem. You'll do much better off as a copywriter if other copywriters exist. You'll do much better off as a graphic designer if other graphic designers exist. And I know I'm beating this to death, but people don't like competition, and competition is precisely what you should be looking for. Does the competition exist? That is the first point that we're covering in this podcast, that you need to look for competition. You need to make sure that the competition is constantly growing, and forget about that talk about saturated markets, because what we are looking for as a secondary factor is that competition profitable? So it's not enough to just have competition. That's a good starting point, but we have to find out, is that competition profitable? Back in the year 2000, when I moved from being a cartoonist to getting into marketing, I'd follow a few people like Jay Abraham or Dan Kennedy. And the strange thing is that all of them seemed to talk about being bankrupt. I don't know if it was a rags to riches kind of story, but what I do know is that eventually all of them were very profitable. And this is the kind of thing that we're looking for when we're starting out any venture, or even if we already have a business running and we're looking to create something brand new. We want to start looking for competition, and we want to see how that competition handles stuff. I was very new in marketing, so there was no competition because everyone was better than me. But I found out who could be my competition in the future, and I started to buy their products. I started to attend their courses. I started to go to their workshops. I started to join their membership sites. And that way you can see from the inside what's really happening. You can see how they run their business. You can see the things that they do. You can see the projects, because they're always marketing to you. In order for them to make a profit, they have to market to you. They have to attract clients like you. If you're just looking at the competition from the outside, it's a little hard to know if they're profitable. They might drive fancy cars, they might have absolutely stunning houses, but they might be just loaded on credit. But when you get into the inside, you realize what's happening. And it's going to be different for every business. Every business is not going to be just, hey, I'm going to join a membership site and I'm going to find out. You might run a retail store. You might have a restaurant. You might be in services. It's going to be slightly different for everyone. However, there are ways to find out if the competition is truly profitable or if they are running projects that are truly profitable. But all this research can be mind-numbing and things change all the time. And in the end, all you have is a case study. And a case study is nothing but history of something that existed at some point in time. Maybe a week ago, maybe a month ago, but it's all history and everything has moved on. So what we look for is what is being put out on a regular basis. At Psychotactics, for instance, you'll notice that we do article writing, we do copywriting, we have courses in cartooning, we have products and pricing. And one thing is very clear, there is nothing new about all of these things. But we know that in the past, we've had a need for these things. We've had a need for copywriting or article writing or whatever. We've had a need for them ourselves. And so we bought into some of it in the past. Maybe we bought some books, maybe we bought some courses. So what's already working on Amazon, what's already working in other places, points to a factor of profitability. Sure, you can't do the research, you don't have the time, you don't have the resources, but you can go to Amazon and look at the things that are working already. And if they're already selling by the dozens or hundreds or thousands or whatever the number, you know that that sector, that product, that service is profitable. And that's where we need to be going. We first look for the competition. Is there a lot of competition? If there is, we need to enter that field. The second stage is to look, is that competition profitable? How do we know it's profitable? We could do our research, get into the inner circle, or we look at external factors like books selling on Amazon on that topic. If we've been thinking that competition is bad for us, it's not. It's good for us. It's a good benchmark. And there is a third and just as important reason, and that is to avoid the headwinds. Let's find out what this headwind business is all about. In the sport of cycling, there is a concept called drafting. Strange as it may seem, the cyclists that are leading the pack are not trying to be right in front. They're trying to be second. And scientist Paul Daugherty explains, he says the cyclist, as he moves through the air, produces a turbulent wake behind him, and it makes vortices. Vortices create a low pressure behind the leading cyclist, and therefore, if you're following a cyclist, you can move into the wind behind that front cyclist, and you gain an advantage. Which means that the cyclist right behind the leader is usually using 30% less energy to achieve approximately the same thing. And then, towards the finish line, they can edge forward and win. And this is what competition does for us as well. Google was the 14th search engine. And then after that came Bing. And we laugh at Bing. We think, oh, that's Bing. Who ever goes on Bing to search for anything? You can haha your way, but In 2019, Bing's revenue rose 12%. They made $32.5 billion. And you and I know that this is true for any business. If you were starting up a web design company back in the year 2000, it was all very glamorous, but you had to convince people. You had to convince them that email existed as a thing, that they needed to have a website, that they needed to do this and they needed to do that. And all of this education had to be done. And today you don't have to do that. With all of the web designers that are out there, you just have to say, you know how it is. All businesses have to have some kind of web presence, and a website is what you'd need. And the customer goes, yep, I already know that. I've done the research, and now I need to know what kind of website I'm going to build. So all of that headwind, all of that education, all of that extra work that you would have to do to be right at the front of the pack, well, you don't have to do that anymore. We think the competition is a problem, but we don't have to educate anybody anymore. So we can just focus on getting the results. We can be 14th in the line as far as search engines go, or 140th, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. What does make a difference are the results that we get for our clients. Because eventually that's what clients are looking for. They're not looking for a service or a product. In fact, they don't even want your service or your product. What they want is a specific result. And if you define that result in the beginning, and then you get the client to that result in the best possible way, in the fastest possible way, in the most luxurious possible way, then that client is going to come to you. Then the client is going to pay for your products and your services. And so we need to change our view of competition. And in this podcast, that's precisely what we covered. The market is not saturated. That market will continue to exist. In fact, if there is competition, that's the space that we have to enter. The lack of competition is kind of death. Nothing exists there, and you don't really want to go there. So that's the first thing. The competition is the sign of a vibrant economy, of growth, of vitality. You want to be in that area and not away from competition. The second thing is we have to examine, is that profitable? And we can do this through external means, looking at things like Amazon, or getting into the inner circle and working out how profitable it is from the inside. And finally, we have to remember that competition is not a problem. They do all the groundwork for us. They take all the headwinds. We're just drafting. We're just staying in second place or third place or 14th place for that matter. And we're conserving energy because we can take that energy and then we can improve our products and our services. And we have to focus on the result. And you've heard me say this over and over again. We don't need more information. What we need are results. We don't need more information. We need results. And that's what you're looking for. We'll cover an episode on how to get those results somewhere down the line. But this is what competition does for us. Don't be afraid of competition. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. We're going to have two courses that come up shortly in 2021. The first one being the info product course. And as you know, info products have existed forever. Books, periodicals, magazines. But of course, we want to get some how-to across, and we want to do it in a format that causes the customer to come back. So it's not just about selling the first book or selling the first video or whatever it is that you're selling your course maybe. It's about them coming back. And how do you construct it in a way that they use your material, they consume it, and then they come back? The most expensive customer is the one that buys your product for the first time. It's borne out by statistics, by research. Once a customer buys and they come back repeatedly, that's the kind of customer that you want. It saves you a lot of money, saves you a lot of energy. Well, it's all goodness. Let's put it that way. So that's what the info products course really shows you. It shows you how to construct that info product. So go to psychotactics.com/info goodies and you'll get the goodies. And then if you decide, you can go ahead with the home study. The second one, and we haven't done this course since 2013, not online at least. This is the sales page course. And it's changed completely since 2013 because we've tested it and run it in different cities across the world. We've done it in Munich, in Houston, in lots of places. We don't need the names right now. But this is the sales page course, and unlike before, this has been completely revamped, written from the ground up. And at the end of the day, you want a result. You don't want more information. You know how there is lots of information on how to write sales pages, but you want results. And what this shows you how to do is how to take a sales page and write it in 3 days flat. We do this in the workshop in 3 days flat, but this course will take probably about 10 to 12 weeks because we'll slow down the pace. But when you write the sales page, no matter whether you're a copywriter or not a copywriter, you'll do it in about 3 days, maybe less. That will be on sale on the 27th of Feb. That's the last day of Feb. And we'll give you more details as that gets nearer. It's probably too far away to say anything about it right now. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already heard of 5000 VC, you've probably not been listening to the endings of this podcast. But yeah, join us in 5000 BC and we'll see you there. Bye-bye. Still listening? When I was growing up, one of my favorite reads was Mad Magazine. And if you ever pick up Mad Magazine and look at their subtitle, what it says is number one in a field of one. And that was their competition, just themselves, in their own crazy way. That kind of appealed to me. And yes, in the beginning, I definitely felt the pressure of competition. But then whenever that came up, I had to remind myself, if Mad Magazine could survive and do really well, so can I. And so there you go. All you need to be is number one in a field of one.